This DJNTV show is sponsored by DJ Event Planner, Electra Voice, DJ Trivia and DJ Bingo, ProX Direct, Odyssey Cases, Perfect Portals, Instant DJ Requests, and our DJNTV Insiders. This is John Young from DJNTV. Thanks for watching. It's about time to start, guys.
Is it? I'm sorry.
It is.
I'm sorry.
It is. It just comes screeching in with the car tire and everything, and there it is.
By the way, Cubby, John's notorious for not ever giving us a countdown.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, live.
Oh, welcome everybody! Hey. It's Monday night. We're here. Yes, we made it. No, hopefully everybody's doing great tonight. And John is back. So I know a lot of you are tuned in specifically because he gave us this great topic, teased it last week, and then said, "Heck with you guys, yeah. I'm not showing up. You're on your own." And we're not talking about that without you. Like, no, that's not an option.
So here we are.
So here we are tonight. Yes. So thank you very much.
So yeah, we're gonna dig into some contracts and really kind of for those who have been wanting to get started and having a contract of some sort, we're going to kind of talk about that from very simple to a little bit more elaborate. There is a page that we're going to have a lot of different sample contracts out there. So you can go and take a look at those contracts, and some of them might be applicable to you, some of them may not. The idea with all the samples that you're going to be seeing and we're going to be talking about tonight is that they're kind of samples or suggestions. These are basically compilations of contract research that has been done by artificial intelligence. And this is what it has generated. And there's some interesting things in those, and that's what we'll talk about a little bit tonight and go through that. So to start it out, guys, I wanted to get it when you first started back in the day, right after you stopped carving, the bride's name into a stone with your little, Flintstone thingy. Your first contracts, what did they consist of? What was all covered on those, and what were they like?
Go ahead, Dan.
Mine basically is the same as it is now. No,
my name.
Although I will say it was pretty much the same right up until maybe 3 or 4 years ago. I took it. I had a guy that kind of half took me under his wing when I was first starting out in the mobile business, and he gave me the piece. So I got my information about the couple, and then I had my 2 paragraphs of CYA type of stuff, both for them and for me. And then that was it, a place for them to sign.
Yep.
And that was what it was for the longest time. And I struggled a lot, and I'm sure we'll get into this a little bit, but I struggled a lot with that balance between making sure it was legal enough and not being enough paper to sign a house.
Sure.
Like for those of you that have ever signed for a house, it's 8,000 pages long. And I was really trying to avoid that. So I probably, had it ever been needed and gone to court, I would have been just, stuck in a hard place, because I'm sure I was not as legal as I should have been for all those years.
Sure.
Man, 18 years ago when there was no internet and there's a few chat boards here and there, honestly, true story. There was several chat boards that are no longer in existence that were DJ chats, and and a lot of associates from around the United States that still friends with today. We'd share some of our, took an idea from here, and just kind of copulated it into a single contract. And then I got smart and I talked to an attorney, and we went over the pros and cons and what we should do and what we shouldn't do, and try to take a lot of legalese out of it, but just enough to protect me and the client. Like I tell them, this protects you as well as it does me. I'd love to do business on a handshake. It's just not possible any longer.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'd invest in, if you don't have the money to invest in an attorney, there's some great contracts that are out there. If you are a member of DJ Event Planner, as you're setting up your DJ Event Planner, they have contracts there that you can that other DJs have shared around the world, that you can massage and make your own. And they're really easy ones to use. Other than that, I'm not familiar with any other platforms and what they can do.
I think the one interesting thing you said there, Cubby, was that having protections for both yourself and the client. I think that's a big one that we definitely want to kind of touch base, because that was something that, as we were going through and looking at, there's 11 different sample contracts that we be able to see here. It was in most of them. There was the protections for both sides, and there's some different verbiage and different things on there. Verbiage. That was very interesting when it came to that. So looking back at my very first contracts, it was the bottom part of a sheet of paper. That sheet of paper had the contract was cut on a dotted line and return that, because that's what you'd return that with a check, like it was like a payment voucher. And then the middle of the contract was the planning, your first dance song, father-daughter, check yes or no song, mother-son, check yes, dollar dance, yes. That was just the middle section, and then there was room enough for like 6 or 8 songs that they could put in for requests. And then the very top was the cover letter, all in one. And that probably
planning form and your contract,
everything on one sheet of paper, because why waste a second? Not going to cut an extra tree down just for making.
Oh, then you had to wait for it to come back.
Oh.
Like some of these DJs, have all these electronic signatures or DocuSigns that, you had to wait for you had to pray that they still liked you. They mailed it back and they wasted a stamp on you. Yeah, I mean, it was something, or met with them and say, let's sign this in person. Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, back 18 years ago, it was a whole different ballgame than it is now.
Definitely was. And early, you mentioned those chats early on. In one of the chats, DJ chat, I believe it was, I met a gentleman by the name of Cap Capello. And Cap was a big proponent of having a well-written contract. And he had done a lot of research and put a lot of time into it, and had probably a contract that was longer than multi-page, huge document. But he was really instrumental in trying to encourage those of us who had a one-page, little of nothing, to get a legitimate contract that was there to protect yourself and your time and investment, as well as the client. So, are you ready? Okay.
One thing, as we're talking about this, and some of these that we're going to use, obviously, are good starters and things like that. It Cubby talked about, with some of the platforms that are out there. I obviously encourage, those are some good starting spots. If you don't know where to begin, start with that. Start with what fits what you're looking for, and then, as Cubby said, take it to a lawyer. I know one of the hardest things that I had was I always thought I had to have an entertainment or like a lawyer who specialized in entertainment. Right? You've got some that specialize in mortgage, you got some that specialize in elder care and stuff like that. And so I was trying to find one that would specialize in entertainment, because I actually asked. I asked the lawyer that helped us with a mortgage. He wasn't a straight up mortgage lawyer, but he him and his friend. I was like, listen, I'm looking for somebody to help me with this.
Yeah.
And basically I asked him, I was like, is this something you can help me with? And he actually said, can I do it? Yes. Will I do it? No. and said, go, basically go to somebody else, because it was, I don't know if he just didn't want to get into it, or if it was one of those, we have our specialties. If somebody called me for an event that's not my specialty, I'm turning it down. So I don't know if it was that reason, but it took me a long time to find a lawyer that would do and take a look at things. So if you reach out to one or two and they're like, listen, I don't do that, I don't handle it, don't give up. There's got to be some in your area. It's just they're picky. And if if you come from a small area, it might be harder to do that. Sometimes you can get lucky and just find ones within your state who are willing to know what your local pieces are. I'm getting way ahead of myself. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. You're good.
Okay.
You're good with that. So yeah, the idea of having it looked at is a great. Well, again, everything you're going to see tonight and what we're talking about is just our opinions, and it's nothing for legal advice. It's just what we've seen, what has been thrown out there for discussion purposes only, and we have have opinions on many of the things that we'll be hitting tonight. Yeah, for once, you guys are the ones looking at snow, not us. So yay!
Not me.
Oh, it's going to be north of you, I think. More north and east of you. So why have a contract? Let's start with that. If you don't have a contract, if you have, you guys mentioned a handshake agreement in your areas. Are you familiar with the handshake agreement from the standpoint? Is it a legal binding thing in your area, or is it basically good luck?
I would probably say good luck. I'm not for certain. I don't know one way or the other, but I do have outside of my weekly events, I have a contract for everything, corporate events and photo booth and other. But my weekly events at different bars, those are done on a handshake. Going, look, this is something we're going to partner with, and if we can make this go in your bar, your location, whatever, I'm all for it. But what am I going to do is if I have a 6-month contract with a bar to do trivia, I don't do karaoke, but it's say trivia, karaoke, or whatever, and it just doesn't pan out. Are you going to take them to court? Probably not. Why, why burn yourself within your town? So my trivia nights are done on a handshake, but anything else,
it's got to be pretty much. Yep.
And I'm not familiar if there's that rule here or not. I've heard in certain areas, even where handshake rules, sometimes apply, that, a true verbal agreement sometimes is more difficult because it's hard to prove anything.
Exactly. Yeah.
But if you have a paper trail, even an email that shows that this is an agreement, it might not be a formalized contract, but in some of those areas, that's enough to try and at least, agreement, that we're going to pay this for X amount or whatever.
And that becomes a gray area because the handshake is one part of it, and it's tough to prove, as you say. But once there's been money, a retainer, and they've written in the corner of it, retainer for wedding DJ type of thing, you start getting into a gray area. And yes, you can function without a contract and still be okay probably 90% of the time, but you're eventually going to run into a problem where you promised this and you didn't deliver, and now I want my money back. And that's the small claims court thing. It can be a real problem. So the contract is really an important tool in what you need to have for your business to protect, again, the business and also prospective clients. I got a spam that came in across Twitch. Dan, do you have the ability to pop one of those up?
Is it which I have them all loaded and ready to go? Which one would you like to start with?
Let's. Could you jump down to the DJ, not the subcontractor, DJ entertainment contract? It would be the second one. So when it comes to a contract, there's a variety of different things. You can have a lot of legalese. I think Mike mentions that he's got 8 pages long, and they can be very simple. Truthfully, you could sit down in a coffee shop, take a napkin from your Starbucks, and you could write a contract, and it would be a valid contract with the pertinent information. Generally, that information is, who's party A, who's party B, and their particulars to make sure that they are who they are. Meaning that name, the person's pertinent information. Then what services are going to be rendered, the price for it, and sign. Dates and things such as that. So you'll see a consistency as we're looking at these different contracts. Is that right at the very top? You've got who are the two parties. And it's going to be talking about the location and dates and different things, the different parts of it. Then, of course, you can get more elaborate than just the napkin version. It's going to talk about the services. And with the 11 contracts that are out there, and by the way, if you want to go follow along with these are out at DJNTV.com/contracts. And they're all PDF. You can download those and take a look at those. But then they get into services. And this is an area, guys, I wanted to just kind of pause here for a second. When you are doing on your contracts you're using today, do your services area, does it change, or is it one of those things that, Cubby will provide wedding entertainment services for your wedding? How do you guys handle talking about your services today as you go from event to event? Cubby, go ahead.
So mine is a lot more detailed out. It's not 8 pages long. It's 2. I talk about start time and end time. If it's a non-package, it's a 4-hour event, 5-hour event, what time it's supposed to start, what time. But I also put a disclaimer in those times are, flexible, but I gotta, if it's a 5-hour package, 10 minus 5 is 5. It's a 5-hour package. And then I do have power restrictions in there because sometimes here in Iowa, people will do something down on the farm, and I have literally and I don't have it in front of me, and I apologize. The amps I gotta have per circuit because I've been in a barn before and I've just blown power. So I have exactly what my requirements are. In the event that I'm not, if I'm not notified prior to that, that they don't have proper sound. If I blow a circuit, it's out of my control, type of thing. So really, I don't take 2 15-minute breaks though.
Yeah. So, but in the services area, you really aren't changing things beyond, timing really, or adding like officiating.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So officiating has a different contract because there's different needs, because I may not officiate the same under a DJ contract. I may officiate outside. Same with the photo booth. I have a different contract for you have those we'll talk about later. I can see. But yeah, I'm a DJ. I have a DJ contract, an officiating contract, and a photo booth contract because they all have different needs and have different services that are provided. I don't want to have a just blanket general umbrella.
Dan, how about yourself? Do you do the services areas as specific per event, or is it something that's just kind of a blanket and then?
I have a line item basically that allows anything that they're doing or the add-on that they have. Get basically just fills in takes right from the DJ event planner, throws it right in, and it's right there as part of the contract before it goes into more of the legal pieces of it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I do that also because by having that, it's kind of that, back check for me that I don't forget that it was part of their day.
Exactly, and that's very similar to the way I do it. Is I don't break it down into music selection and different things such as that. But then again, this is a computer's idea of what a DJ entertainment contract should be, and these are things that obviously somewhere out there people have had in a contract for this AI learning to have picked it up. But yeah, mine are the pieces and not so much that people can really choose. I do have a couple of little upsells that they could choose on the contract, but most of it is basically this is what you get. And unless people say, I don't want that as part of the package, this is what you get. But
how about deposit versus retainer?
See, that was a big argument. And the argument went for, it was numbered about 8 years ago. It really came up is if you use the concept or the word deposit insinuates that it could be refunded or should be refunded upon cancellation if they do. Whereas retainer is something that's put down and it isn't insinuating a possible refund. I think that as they have it here, the client shall pay a deposit, the amount as a non-refundable deposit. I think that says it pretty clearly that it's non-refundable and it's not going to be returned, but it's to reserve the DJ services. Does it matter? Truthfully, no. I think it was just something that we just all jumped on and thought it was, we're being so smart. But I think when you're talking about it being a non-refundable first payment, for lack of a better way to describe it, I think that gets the point across. In a court of law, if you've ever been taken to a small claims court, which we have on a few occasions, where we have had to sue for a completion of the contract, the retainer deposit, that wording does not matter to a small claims court. It's really dependent upon the judge and how they're feeling that day. It's just wording is probably the most important wording there is the non-refundable.
I remember when a lot of that came out and there was a lot of claims that different areas In our area, if you use deposit, we lost because we used the word deposit. Did you lose because you used the word deposit, or did you lose because you didn't mention anything about non-refundable, right? And so I think there is, some of those different pieces that's in there, that could potentially make. But again, if you have the part that's non-refundable, I mean, you could have called it, I don't know, but it probably would have stuck.
And really, from our experience when it came to the retainer deposit, whatever, is in order to keep that, and especially if you had somebody cancel out on your show 2 weeks ahead of time, and they refuse to pay the balance, we're going to get into the balance with the next line, but you take that person to court, and they're going to say, well, we canceled because of a death in the family, and we want our deposit back because that's something that was beyond our control. We are sitting there saying, well, we held that date for you, and we should be paid in full because that you've stolen inventory from us, basically. And that argument will go in front of the judge, and the judge will kind of look at that and say, okay, how much work have you put into their day so far? Have you put in enough to justify even the deposit? And it's like, well, we do all of our planning the week of, so we really haven't done much for it. Then the judge is probably going to look and say, you know what? You probably didn't have any expenses involved with their day, and it sucks to be you. Give them the retainer back. Has happened, not on our case, but it has happened to DJs. If you can't show that you've had enough work involved with it and such, or showing that the date would have booked with a different, to show that was a date that you could have made money if they wouldn't have been holding it, you get to be in a really, really tough place with that. Anyway, balance. Let's talk a little bit about that. They talk on that one right there about 7 days. What do you guys, Dan? What's your if they're going to pay by check? What's your how many days out?
60 days.
60 days. Whew, gee, many crickets. You're really crazy.
Yeah. I personally don't like to collect money day of. I don't like to handle any money day of. If they want to come up and they want to give me a tip, that's fine. But, beyond that, I don't want them to have to worry about that. And I definitely don't want to be tracking them down afterwards, after they went on the honeymoon and then they decided to splurge. I don't have to deal with any of that.
Yep.
60 days out is also when I do my meetings. So there was kind of a double reason for this, because it was a perfect opportunity when I'm in front of them doing that final planning meeting. The last thing that we would do is, hey, let's take care of the balance right here and now while I'm in front of you. And so even though 60 days might be when it was due, if we met at day 52, I was fine with that because we were taking care of it in person.
Understandable. Now, typically that's a little on the extreme side for those of you watching that as far as that far out. Cubby, what's your if getting a check for that final payment, what's your deadline?
Well, I don't think that's too extreme. Mine, I have 2 payments, John. Mine are, and it kind of goes along with my cancellation policy, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later, but let me explain. I have a 90-day payment and a 30-day payment.
Mm-hmm.
And my attorney said, well, if you don't collect that 90-day payment, if they cancel at 45 days, it could get kind of weird, because I have 2 different penalties. I have one if you book 6 months in advance, you cancel 6 months in advance, you have this payment due, so I collect a 90-day and a 30-day. It also, I'm with Dan. I don't want to wait till the night of the event. It gets too awkward. I had one time we were on a golf course and they stole the golf carts in the middle of the night. Somebody left the keys in them, and all the groomsmen got drunk and they got arrested. And it took me a week to get paid. So yeah, nothing the night of the event. 30 days and at least 90 days and 30 days.
Nice.
And that helps me as I went solo. And we've talked about this before. That keeps money for me going all year round. In January and February, I'm not doing a lot of events or big dollar events because weddings. That I can stay. I don't have a job, so it helps me that I got money coming in all year round. A 90-day payment, a 30-day payment.
Yeah, that cash flow would definitely help that. And it wasn't that 60 days is a bad thing. Whatever. Don't get me wrong with that. If that made it sound that way, it's just that. The common is, as Cubby mentioned, 45 days or 30 days as that final payment are usually kind of numbers that were most commonly thrown around. So getting payments in full before that is slightly unusual for the industry, but that's not a bad idea because then it's, again, all done and handled.
Nobody ever called me usual, so it's okay.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think also like other wedding professionals, photographers and videographers, and they're all collecting about 30 days out as well.
Exactly.
Venues. So I don't think we're out of the norm if we ask for it.
I think the only one in our area, because videographers, photographers, everyone else is probably looking 30 days out. The venues are probably the only ones, and they've gotten like half down, but they want that final bill paid 2 weeks in advance because by then they should have their final food count. And it's like, okay, now we know you're going to have 200 meals. We're going to prepare 200 meals, and we need X amount of dollars to do that. And that's fairly common in this area when it comes to the venue and the catering side of it. For my DJ things, I want to have that last payment a month in advance. Does that happen? Sometimes. I don't ride people too terribly much with that. So sometimes it's 3 weeks out. Sometimes it's 4 weeks. My goal with it is that if they're paying by check, I want to have it at least 2 weeks or more out because, and I've talked about this in other shows, that our banking, the way our credit union, which, they're still, I guess, a credit union, they would get the check, they run it through, and if it happens to come back with insufficient funds, they won't tell me that it's insufficient funds. They'll wait 2 days or whatever it is and run it again. So it can take up to 10 days before it's back and forth for it to show up that it's a bounced check. So if I did get a check the week of, and I don't know these people or whatever, it could be a bad check. And that has happened to us, and that has led to our small claims court issues over the years, is that we've just taken a check too close to the wedding date, and it was a bad check. So
I have a local friend of mine who likes to get paid on the night of because he feels like if he doesn't get paid, like he got paid nothing for working. I don't know his mentality, but his mentality was, I like getting a check the night of because then I know I got paid for my job that I just did. I'm like, wow, okay.
I've heard that, and I've also heard from the same standpoint of if they're handing out money, they're more likely to hand out a tip to it. Like, and again, whether you track it and that's how it figures out, whatever. I like the 60 days out, and I'll put another bug. I know this is not where we were going tonight, but another possible thing to think about. You mentioned the venues are getting paid 30 days out. The photographers are getting paid 30 days out. There's a lot of money that's going to be going out of their pocket all at once.
Right there, boom. Yeah,
I can beat them to that. not like suddenly they're going to pay me and they're not going to pay the venue.
Right, yeah.
But
you're spreading it out.
Right, it doesn't seem as
daunting. Yeah.
As downing, maybe because they didn't just pay out, $10,000 in 3 days.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very, very true. Good point with that. Yeah, you're the cheapest one we paid in the last 2 days. Oh, really? That's just a lot of money. Bill Barra out there mentions that having a discount for paying in full at the time of booking. I could definitely see that being attractive for some business models. I guess I've never jumped or tried to, or done anything like that, but definitely something to think about, because for many people, having it paid in advance, and then obviously in your contract you'd have to have, if they cancel, what gets returned, because there's no court in this land that's going to allow you to keep, let's say it's $1,000 wedding, and you book it and then they cancel a month later. There's nobody going to let you keep that full $1,000. There's going to be something that comes out of that. There's one more thing I wanted to, before we got cancellation. We talked about that. Okay.
So I noticed something at the bottom, John, all the way down at the bottom, about the legalese. I would encourage somebody to, where it says the contract shall be governed by the laws of the state, and any legal arising out of this contract should be brought forth in the courts of that state. I would even go as far as the county in which you're in. I have, in the state of Iowa, sometimes I go to Okoboji, sometimes I go to Sioux City. I go all over, Davenport, a couple hours away, so on and so forth. I don't want to go to court there. I want to go to Polk County, where I reside. Mm-hmm. And so all transactions will be in the state of Iowa, in Polk County, my county. So I'm not going at any expense. If they're gonna want to, if there's something's gonna happen, they're gonna have to come to my county. And
that works. If they're going to sue you, but if you have to sue them, it's got to be done in Minnesota. It has to be done in the county in which the services were rendered. Yep. So yes, I've had to go to multiple different areas around. But Dan, scroll up just a little bit, Dan, because this section right here on this particular one was the area in which the cancellation policy, and then it talks about the protections a little bit back and forth. And you'll see as you look at the different contracts, there's a lot of similarities between what they're talking about and having a cancellation deadline. I think that's a huge thing. Do you guys have Cubby, you got a cancellation deadline on your contract?
Cancellation as far as
if somebody cancels, what date do they owe you full? Or do you not have that because of the the hard dates of final payments?
No, actually, no. I have one. It's 6 months and 90 days.
Okay.
If they cancel 6 months and 90 days, because as a majority of a wedding DJ, I'm not going to book myself more than 6 months out. I mean, it just doesn't happen. So it's in 90 days you'll have the balance in full, but in 6 months you'll have the current balance, and 90 days you would the entire balance.
Dan, what's your cancellation deadline when it comes to that? Is that 60-day or what would it be?
Yeah, it's 60. I think at one point I toyed around with doing 90 because I actually got stuck. I had a school that decided to cancel and just kind of really created a nightmare. And it's like, wow, if I'd been 90 days out, they still would have had to pay me. But they canceled to go with somebody else. It was a weird situation. But yeah, so I'm pretty sure it's still 60. It's been a while since I've looked at that part to remember.
Sure. So right below the cancellation area, it mentions force majeure. This is actually a term that didn't exist very often in contracts unless they were written by an attorney prior to COVID. But basically, COVID brought that out, and it brought it out not only in our type of world for performances, but it brought it out into the world of the hotel not being able to provide services because of, if you kind of read through there, talking about governing their laws, if there's a situation, the act of God, civil unrest or whatever, and that's where the COVID made its ugly face into our contracts. Whereas if we can't perform because of a public pandemic, because everything shut down, that became a terminology that was never there before. We never even thought about it until that situation. Let's see. Is there anything else down in this that we should hit? Yeah, and then of course there's the names of it. A couple of things when it first off, it said it's something about holding people harmless and such back and forth. Some DJs have had in their contract where they've had that if somebody gets injured because of my gear, stripping on my gear or something, that the DJ is not responsible. That's probably not going to hold up in court. This is why we have our liability insurance, because things happen, unfortunately. And then, of course, people have had it in their contract, whereas if somebody at the party crashes through your sound system and breaks something, that then it becomes the responsibility of the client. Again, depending upon which jurisdiction you're in or where you're at, that could be very, very tough to hold up in a court of law. Somebody takes your $1,000 Sennheiser microphone, whatever, you got a really super high-end microphone, and they do a mic drop and they break the element or break it. To go and try to get to collect money from that, if you got a client who's feeling sad for you and wants to, you got lucky. If they're basically telling you to go pound pavement because that's the risk of doing your job, they're actually somewhat right with that. So you have to either have insurance or you're self-insuring potential damage like that, because our contracts, while meaning well, can't be enforced in most jurisdictions when it comes to that kind of stuff.
It comes down to basically trying to hold somebody else accountable for another person's actions.
Very, very tough.
And that's where both sides become the problem, right? You might not be able to be sued by the bride and groom because your speaker fell on one of their guests, but that guest can decide to do something, because they didn't sign a contract with you.
Exactly.
So even if you have some of those jurisdictions, I think those are the pieces where it becomes very tough to try and have any say otherwise. And
let's jump to the photo booth contract next, because the idea that the client can sign something, but yet it's the other. Let's see, setup payment. Maybe it's down a little farther, somewhere in there. There we go. Use of photos. That one I found very interesting. That the client authorized the company to any photos be taken to be used for what you're moving. Okay,
use it bigger.
The client agrees that any photos taken may be used by the rental company for marketing and advertising. So this is a case of just what Dan was describing, where the client is like, okay, I don't mind if any of my guests are used in the advertising, but that's not a release from the people. And even if you're at the event and say, hey, everyone, have fun at the photo booth, but just, let you know those pictures may go online, that kind of a thing, that's not going to probably hold water in most areas. If you get somebody who's like, yeah, I don't want my picture online, they might say it nicely or they might say it expensively. Just keep in mind that any pictures that are used there could get you in trouble. Probably won't, but it could. And there's nothing that you and a client can sign that's going to be able to wave that magic wand and make that go away. Have you guys ever, Cubby, have you ever had a problem where you've had some pictures from an event that people have been like, yeah, no, I don't want you to post those or anything?
No, actually, we don't have that disclaimer in any of ours. We get the photos. We stock photos for the photo booth, and we use any photographer. We ask them for rights and tell them to brand their photos and tag them in all the photos that we use.
Sure.
So yeah, we don't use any images from the photo booth that are not just for that purpose alone. I don't want to, embarrass anybody or have because grandma's in their Lady Gaga hair or somebody's drunk or. I have some instances where a young lady was engaged, was in the booth with somebody else, and I get a text afterwards going, "No, just go to the pictures." I'm like, "It's not going anywhere. Don't worry."
It's going to the bride and groom. No, that's funny. Dan, how about yourself? Do you have anything with the photo situation with where you've had problems with that or anything?
I've had that line in. I've had different people question. I had one couple in particular who was looking through the contract and they're like, yeah, we don't agree to that. And I was like, all right, put a line through it. You initial it. I'll initial it. Done. Not going to use them. But beyond that, I've never had anything after the fact. And even that one, it was just was one of those things where they just were like, we're not worried. We just don't want you to use us.
Right.
And I'm like, all right, that's fine. I've heard of other ones, I've heard of kind of the other way where some clients have made some DJs sign some things because of the clientele that, who their guests were. But I've never, I think a lot of that has kind of almost gone by the wayside as long as you're typically doing what you typically do. Right. Because a lot of our couples are finding us on social media and they're recognizing that we're sharing pictures from the events. So they kind of have an understanding that this is something you do. And if they have a problem with it, they're going to say something about it.
Very much so. Yep.
That's not a legal piece, right? They could change their mind and come after you. But I think a lot of them have started to recognize just by simply like, well, listen, that's how we know they do a good job is because we see pictures of the thing. And others are kind of like, hey, they're talking about my wedding. Like, this is awesome.
Yes.
So that's another reason why sometimes while that's in there, you get a little bit more leeway on it from those standpoint. But again, the guests are a different situation.
The area I've had this happen or come up the most has been with schools. And it's been schools where there has been students that were in a protection level type program where there was a non-custodial parent that didn't know they were there. And the names had been changed. And that, I think over the years, and again, we've been doing school dances for 3 or 4 years now, 4 or 5 times it's come up where I've had basically saying, okay, there cannot be any pictures tonight. There can't be anything. Nothing can be said about any of the names of students. If you're going to be doing any games and you're going to be talking to kids with, you can't get names from these kids because they just cannot have anything. It's like, oh, okay. So
a lot of, coming from the school standpoint, like the schools that I was teaching in, a lot of them had photo releases that were expected to be signed, to give permission for the school to take different pictures and do different things. And it's still there, but one of the things that I have been using lately, like for the longest time, I'm like a school event, I'm not taking a picture. Like I'll take a picture of my gear beforehand, and then I'll put like a little disclaimer that says, because this is a school, I'm not going to have pictures, yada, yada, yada. But we have a husband and wife team in this area that are in with a lot of the schools, and they'll come to the events and they'll take pictures and then they'll post them online. They'll allow people to buy the photos that they have. Like it's an agreement that they have with the school, and they go everything from sporting events to dances to plays. Like it's about everything. They're pretty much at
Sure.
every event you can think of. If I see them there, it's fair game.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
Basically,
yeah.
like I'm not going to take a bunch of pictures, but like the past couple of dances that I've done, I'm like, they were there. All right, everybody, let's do a big selfie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you know, and I get that, and you know, kind of also the same thought is like if I'm warning them, if they do have an issue, they can hide. I
Yeah.
also try and make it so nobody's like super clear in it.
Yeah. No, I can definitely see that. Even when we with our newspaper, when we started that, one of the things we were doing is going to schools and doing these little questions for the kids. And we got with a couple of schools, we had to have the teachers pick. Okay, they knew which kids were the ones that couldn't be on film and the ones who could. So they would send out the kids, and we'd ask them in the question, you know, like, "Hey, what's your favorite color? And if you could be a type of ice cream, which ice cream would you be?" And then they would give you the answer, and you know, it's kind of just a cute little, you know, oh, look at there's little Bobby from 3rd grade saying he wants to be a blueberry ice cream guy, you know, whatever. But that was out when the first time when I went to the classroom, and it's like, "Hey, I'm here from the newspaper to do this thing," and they're like, "Yeah, there's kids in here you cannot see, or you can't, you know, that." It's like, what? It just seems so odd to me at the time, but that's the world we live in. So. Is there anything on this one? Kind of scroll down a little bit. I don't know if there's anything else on this one, Dan. That, yeah, I think that was that one was pretty. Let's bounce out to. So on the page, there's we did one for wedding decor, some lighting. Then there's the DJ contract. We talked about that. We'll hit the wedding one. There's a nightclub. There was a high school dance one. There's a karaoke one, and it's subcontractor. We'll hit that one. Photo booth, seminar speaker. I actually wanted to put one of those in there. So if a person was going to be going out and being a speaker for a convention, that's what that contract would look like if you were speaking for the artificial intelligence that's inside the internet. And then we had 2 contracts that were talking a little bit about a la carte pricing and package pricing. They weren't that good, but there's a little bit in there that could be interesting. But let's jump to that. Wedding. To the wedding contract there, Dan, if you've got that. Oh, you had the seminar one up there. Yeah. So again, there's a little bit more information on this one than some of the other ones that were out there. But it's interesting, you know, that the DJ will consult with the client to determine with music selection, a genre, and a playlist for the wedding. There's been times where some of our DJ brethren have been sued because they didn't do the job. They didn't play the first dance right, or they played the wrong version of the first dance, or they played this and they didn't do this. And it came down to the case of when they went to the small claims court and they were sued for, in essence, a refund by the client, is that the judge basically looked and said, okay, what does the contract specify that they were going to do? Well, in this case, the DJs provide music and sound equipment necessary for the wedding. Okay, did you do that? Yes, I had my Evolve 50s or whatever they were, and I had music going for the wedding. Okay, the music, to determine the desired music and a playlist for the wedding, did you do that? Yes, I did. Okay, we had the playlist already, and I went through and played the playlist. I have everything here. I have the log from my virtual DJ, and it's good to go. Did you set up 2 hours beforehand? Yep, all that was done just as a contract. We'll provide music for the wedding for the duration, for the number of hours. The 50-minute break, I would not recommend that, but hey, that's whatever it is. But did you provide music from point A to point B, beginning to the end? Did you make some announcements and such? The basic idea with the contract is that you had to have the minimum of what you were going to do there. And if you were going to be sued by someone, well, did you accomplish what the contract said? And some DJs have it where they're basically going to provide music and lighting from 5 o'clock to 10 o'clock or whatever the times are. That's all they're promising, really, on the contract. So when it comes time that there might be oh, you didn't play the right song. Did it say specifically that they were going to play the exact right song for your first dance? Well, no, it doesn't say that. Then they did their job. Like it or not, that's what it is. So all those little verbiage in there, the wordage, that's why I think you see so much of that, is because of those situations where we get sued because we didn't do something right. And it's usually a very small thing that didn't go right.
I had one of those brides in November. She didn't sue us, but she's like, well, the first 5 songs, the dance floor wasn't packed. And I showed her playlist, and I showed her the playlist off Virtual DJ. I was like, these are directly off your playlist. I mean, we played every song, every 5 of these songs you talk about We played off your playlist that you provided us. And she kind of shut right up because she was like, I was like, that's not our fault. Here we are playing. Here's your playlist. Here are the 5 songs you're talking about that came directly from your playlist. Oh, okay. And then I will give you a virtual DJ. If you do a sound check, make sure you play the entire song. Reason being is she said that we weren't ready to go. And I said, well, that's funny because he did his test song at 3:45, which gave him 30 minutes to set up, and the first guest went until 5, so we were there but if you don't play that entire song, it will not register into virtual DJ.
Yep.
So just let that song go while you are taping chords, pulling, from your lights or whatever you're doing, set up and play one test song, but let it go all the way through. Just let the song continue to play while you're setting up so that you'll have documentation of the time that you actually did set up.
Dan, can you scroll down just a little bit more?
Mm-hmm.
See, we had payments in there, cancellation policy, and again, force majeure in there. There's more. Just this one has obviously more of the legalese in this particular one over the others. But let's jump to the subcontractor one, if you could, Dan. And somebody, Jason, I don't know if you got the message, but we on the samples we have them. They're broken down. Most DJs have got a contract that is photo booth with and they can add things to it. I've seen photo booth where they add the DJ to it, and I've seen DJ where they add that. The DJs are going to fall somewhere in that ballpark. In Cubby's situation, he has specific contracts for those different areas, which is similar to what our samples have, where they're separate contracts, but it really can be whatever's going to work for you. So this is another question of, that I'm hiring someone and the whole subcontractor or the employee, and I wanted to put this out there of what some of the things that a subcontractor will do, and how in this case production company what they would go through and go with this. I don't know if there's any subcontractor out there that has had the company sign a full contract like this for them. But as I was looking at this, it's like this would be a really good idea to be able to make sure that all the bases were covered, because over the years there have been a few times where I've subbed for someone, and either I got I didn't get paid what they were initially talking about because for whatever reason, or there have been times where you don't get paid at all, and those things kind of happen, and it sucks. And it would be nice to have a contract out there.
And make sure they jive with the one that you have, because I noticed yours set up and tear down. This one says subcontractor will arrive at least 1 hour before, where the contract for your wedding and DJ and everything else says 2 hours before. Yeah. So that just make sure they jive.
Yeah.
And I'm not. I know you created this really, really fast on an AI platform. But just make sure that your time of arrival jives with your subcontractors.
Yeah, for sure. So
you're not setting them up for failure.
Yeah. Yeah, so just again some food for thought if you're out there and you're like, okay, I want to just pick up some extra gigs, especially as you're starting out. Sometimes you do sub for other companies that have a full schedule, and that would be a way to do it. Shoot. Again, you guys can go to djntv.com/contracts and take a look at everything out there, because there's a lot of information. Again, it's only really for discussion to look at that and to go make you think a little bit and such, because much of this is a compilation of different contracts that are out there that the internet, the AI system went and looked at and said, this is, if we were going to, write a contract, this is what it would be. Nothing legal about it. It's just a compilation of an online research, basically. So, Dan, I think that's probably going to be good. We're going to have to, we got to wrap things up here, because Howie and the crew is going to be coming up next.
Wow, that was fast.
It did. It went really fast. Let's see.
We were talking legal stuff.
Yeah, we were talking legal stuff. That's for sure. So I think the big thing with the contract is you can put some notes together. If you don't have a contract, put some notes together, kind of figure out what things you want to hit, and then take it to an attorney. And it may not have to be an entertainment. I've only, truthfully, in my whole time, I've only known one entertainment attorney, and we actually had him speak at a convention, disc jockey news convention in Minneapolis one year. He was incredibly informational. Not only did he have great stories, because this guy's done like national acts, so he had, he had the Van Halen, Brown M&Ms type stories, but they were actually legitimate stories that he was involved with on many occasions, and it's like you just want to sit there and like, yeah, that would be neat. But anyway, so put something together, have it checked over by an attorney. It probably cost you $200-300 to do, but it's one of those things. You do it once, and you're probably good for a number of years.
Like insurance, you won't know you needed it till you don't have it.
Exactly, and for those, we talked earlier in the beginning of the night, the handshake things. A lot of DJs who are watching this may have that, or you get paid the week of or the night of. I like to get the money the night of, so it makes me feel like I did something. That's great, right up into the time you get stiffed. As soon as you get stiffed, or as soon as that check bounces, and you'll all of a sudden change your tune really, really quick. So just better to be proactive. Instead of wondering that one, wow, I'm out $1,000. I went and did a wedding, and I'm out $1,000 that I'll never get out of these people. It will happen.
I know a lot of people get into that whole the handshake idea, for the idea. I want to make it easy for people to work with me. I don't want, I want to be the fun person, so I don't want to have to get bogged down in the legal. They're signing contracts for everybody else.
Yep.
Especially the venue, unless they're doing it in their backyard, they're signing contracts of some form or fashion. It is not out of the question for you to have a contract. Just get that. I've had couples who ask me, and I'm like, absolutely, we're doing a contract. I wouldn't even have thought otherwise. So obviously it's out there, but take the time, take the couple bucks that you need to from the lawyer standpoint, and get what you need to have. Just if nothing else, to legitimize yourself even more.
And I think it circles us right back to what Cubby started us talking about. Be the fun guy, maybe not so much, but be the easy booking. If you've got a contract in your DJ event planner system, and you can go click send, and they can go, oh, like it, click sign, click pay. There's not much easier than that. I mean, unless you're going to go and get a donut for Cubby too.
Yeah, I love that, by the way.
That would be good. Especially their sprinkles.
It might be stale by the time it gets there.
There could be. It could be. But...
Well, I can get my address for DoorDash.
There is that. Hanging with Howie is next on DJNTV at djntv.com/chill. The guys are going to be in the chill room here in just a little bit. You can go out there. It's a Zoom room and hang out and talk shop and such. They record for about 20 minutes, and then after that, they open up the room for the night. Tomorrow night, Dan is going to be with Ben Stowe at that 9 o'clock spot. They're going to be kind of bringing us up to speed on any changes with DMX. Ben's been kind of looking at, there's a lot of new ways of controlling lights that some are utilizing DMX, some are not. And Ben's been kind of looking into that, and he's going to give us an update on that, because there's all sorts of different wireless DMX capability out there, and some play well with others, some don't. And he's going to you're going to have a good conversation about that tomorrow night at 9 o'clock. That link will be out there. You go to youtube.com/discjockeynews. You'll be able to find that link tomorrow night if you don't follow me on Facebook, where I usually post those. So I think we're good, guys. And Howie's your out next.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for taking time out of your Monday night to hang with us and enjoy some time. And hopefully you learned a few things. And if nothing else, a few extra moments to take and reevaluate maybe where you're currently at, so you can always move forward. That's the key to any of this. So have yourself a great one. We'll see you next time.
Good night, everybody.